Bienvenue à tous, bienvenue à cette nouvelle séance pour notre présentation pour ISACA Québec. Donc, cette semaine, on reçoit Torrey Trust qui va venir nous parler justement de l'éthique dans l'utilisation de l'intelligence artificielle. On a été exposé à ses travaux puisqu'elle a collaboré avec des travaux de plusieurs universités. Et l'intérêt aussi, c'est de voir qu'est-ce qui est promu auprès des étudiants, de comprendre vraiment qu'est-ce qui est amené et comment ça s'intègre aussi dans les pratiques des organisations. Donc, nous avons aussi Josiane Marsan du CeRTIA, de la FSA de l'Université Laval. Et ça va être notre dernière collaboration avec le CeRTIA. Et éventuellement, on va avoir d'autres conférences qui vont être avec d'autres associations. Donc, on travaille, si vous participez ou vous impliquez dans d'autres associations, il nous fera plaisir de créer des plateformes et des parallèles avec vous. Si vous avez des questions pour Torrey Trust, vous pouvez les poser en français, en anglais ou un mix des deux langues. Je vais m'arranger pour que Torrey puisse répondre à vos questions. Éventuellement, si on n'a pas le temps de répondre à toutes vos questions lors de la conférence, elle a accepté gentiment de répondre à vos questions par la suite. La vidéo sera disponible sur le site de l'Université Laval. Donc, ce que nous allons faire, nous allons vous rendre le lien disponible. Donc, sans plus tarder, je cède la parole à Josiane Masson pour faire l'introduction et la présentation de Torrey Trust.
Merci beaucoup, Alain Fortier, vice-président ISACA, qui a oublié de se présenter. Alors, aujourd'hui, je suis là à titre de directrice du CeRTIA, le Centre de recherche en technologie de l'information et affaires, qui est un centre de recherche qui a été fondé en 2019 en collaboration avec le Centre québécois d'excellence numérique du maintenant ministère de la cybersécurité et du numérique du Québec, à l'époque qui était sous le secrétariat du Conseil du Trésor, un centre de recherche qui a vraiment pour objectif de rapprocher les technologies de l'information et les affaires dans les organisations de tout type, privé, public, OBNL, et à tous les niveaux, du niveau stratégique jusqu'au niveau plus opérationnel, en passant par le niveau humain aussi. Et notre objectif avec des partenariats comme celui d'ISACA, c'est vraiment de rapprocher aussi les gens des universités, donc les chercheurs, les étudiants, les professeurs et les praticiens sur le terrain, parce qu'il n'y a rien de mieux que de se parler, que de collaborer pour bien comprendre les défis, les problèmes et leurs solutions qui nous concernent tous. Et l'IA est une source de problèmes, solutions et de réflexion. Et donc, la connaissance théorique qu'on a dans les universités, mixée avec la connaissance terrain, expérientielle des praticiens, pour nous, c'est vraiment le chemin à prendre. Donc, avec ISACA, on a organisé différents types de conférences, parfois avec des praticiens, parfois avec des chercheurs, professeurs, et puis parfois un mix des deux. Donc, aujourd'hui, on a décidé de donner toute la place à une professeure en technologie de l'apprentissage, Torrey Trust, qui est du Collège d'éducation de l'Université de Massachusetts Amherst. Ses travaux portent sur l'examen critique de la relation entre l'enseignement, l'apprentissage, la technologie, puis sur la manière dont la technologie peut aider les enseignants à concevoir des contextes qui améliorent l'apprentissage des élèves. Donc, oui, ça peut avoir des côtés négatifs, l'intelligence artificielle, mais il y a aussi des côtés positifs. Donc, Madame Trust a reçu le Distinguished Teaching Award de l'Université de Massachusetts Amherst en 2023, le College of Education Outstanding Teaching Award en 2020 et le ISTE Making It Happen Award en 2018, qui honore les éducateurs et les dirigeants exceptionnels qui font preuve d'un engagement, d'un leadership, d'un courage et d'une persévérance extraordinaire pour l'amélioration des possibilités d'apprentissage numérique pour les étudiants et les étudiantes. Plus récemment, Dr. Trust a été une des principales actrices de l'exploration de ChatGPT dans l'éducation. On en parle depuis quelques années maintenant et c'est encore là. Et il y a de plus en plus de compétiteurs de ChatGPT aussi qui apparaissent. Donc, elle a fait plusieurs articles, elle a participé à plusieurs podcasts dans plusieurs médias, notamment US News and World Report, Wired, Tech and Learning et The Hill in Education Week. Donc, vraiment, on est honoré, ravi de recevoir le professeur Trust aujourd'hui. So, Torrey, now the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. I think that's the extent of my French, and I'm very happy to try that out. So thank you all for joining today to help me think through some of these critical ethical questions in generative AI that I have been thinking through quite some time since these tools have come out. So ChatGPT came out November 2022. So we're just about over 2 years now that this tool launched. What was it? It came out as kind of a text-based tool where you could write a prompt and it would generate human-like text in response to your prompt. It really took the world by the storm. In just 2 months, reached 100 million users, being the fastest growing app in history, and became quickly embedded into nearly every career field. Real estate agents saying they can't imagine working without ChatGPT now. And if you look at the date on this article, January 28th, 2023, was just 2 months after ChatGPT launched worldwide. It has been brought into law firms, business, branding, marketing, medicine, and a variety of other fields. Then every big ed tech company and tech company wanted a stake in the AI game. Google came out with its own version of a large language model, originally called Bard, but now called Gemini. Microsoft came out with Copilot, which is what you see on the screen here. Again, the early days, you write in a text response, it gives you a text prompt, it gives you a text-based response. But since these tools have come out, they have continued to be programmed to be even more advanced and changed. Now these tools can create multimedia. ChatGPT recently came out with a reasoning feature where you can see its thinking. We'll talk about whether these tools can think as it replies to you, and also is now connected to the internet. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, meaning the original versions of ChatGPT when it came out was pre-trained on data scraped from the internet leading up to 2021. After that, if you asked it questions about present day context, it was not able to answer or it made stuff up. But now it is directly connected to work as a search tool as well. And then just recently, within the last couple of months, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity have all launched their deep research mode. This is usually you have to pay for the upgraded version. You see the example on the screen here. This is ChatGPT's upgraded version. In the deep research mode, which takes longer, you see on the screen here, it took 4 minutes to respond to my prompt about the impacts of screen time on 1-year-old children. And on the right side here is what the AI did. So this is kind of the reasoning or thinking behind the scenes of this tool, designed to replicate the way humans would go about answering this question. So a really quick preview if you have not seen what that looks like and will not see it fully. Let's see, I want to look at use of generative AI in education, benefits and challenges for educators and IT. Tell me the research. All right. Oh, I didn't press the deep research. Hold on. Let me try this one more time here. Okay, so this is not the deep research mode. You're going to see a really quick response. And here, this is pretty new. You can actually go to links, right? And it'll show you which part of the text is linked to the original article to help with double checking the accuracy of these responses. All right, let me do this one more time with deep research mode. There we go. And we're not going to be able to watch this fully pan out because it can take up to, I think, 27 minutes to reply to a prompt. Recent studies and expert opinions. And what it'll do here is it will then take time to actually like look at research articles, and it will tell you as it's researching right here, it's reading articles, it's synthesizing research, and this can go on for, again, up to a half hour. So this is the newer version, this is the upgraded version of ChatGPT. Then there's also Canvas. So this is a new feature in ChatGPT where you can actually edit text directly in ChatGPT. You no longer have to be in a separate word processing tool, write something, copy it over to ChatGPT, have it help revise, then go back to the Word document and go back and forth. You can actually put in a whole bunch of text and say, change the formatting of this, revise this for clarity, put links to original sources. And you saw through this, magical appearing and disappearing and reappearing text, that the AI tool was able to take the prompts that you gave it and reformat, redesign, or rewrite text for you directly in the tool. And then there's this.
ChatGPT. What equation did I write down there?
Ah, I see it now. You wrote down 3x plus 1 equals 4.
Yep, exactly. So what's the first step I should take to try to solve this?
The first step is to get all the terms with x on one side and the constants on the other side. So what do you think we should do with that plus 1?
Okay, I'm going to try to subtract 1 from both sides, and then I'll see what I get.
Great idea. Perfect. Now, what do you get when you subtract 1 from both sides?
All right, so this is AI vision built into the app-based version of ChatGPT, where you can connect it to your camera, to your microphone, show it around where you are, and it will analyze and respond to you in a multimodal way. But that's not all. There's also this new operator feature, and this one I think scares me the most about AI use. So basically, you can now give control of your computer over to ChatGPT through this operator feature, and it will basically do whatever you ask it to do. Right now, people are using it to order something from, Instacart or DoorDash, or fill out an online form. But educators have found that they can have this tool go to their learning management system, open up a discussion forum post, and reply as if it were a student. And all the student has to do is give it a prompt, and then AI takes over their computer and does that for them. Let's watch just a little bit of this.
Then I select Finish Up to give control back to the agent. And this is where things get interesting. OpenAI's agent is smart enough to head over to the sites page and then select the merge site, which is the one that I requested to be updated. It browses into the site and then on the left menu goes to blogs. On this page, there are no drafts visible. However, there is a hidden dropdown which you can select to filter only for drafts. Operator selects this and then selects the most recent draft. So this is already pretty impressive. Before performing any action, it confirms with me that I do in fact want to publish this blog. I then continue to watch as this agent goes and selects the publish button from the top right over here. Very cool. Though, as a developer, testing is pretty important.
So there is a little bit of interactivity, but in many cases you hand over the keys to your computer, so to speak, and AI can do the tasks that you ask of it, even like going into a blog and publishing a blog post, rewriting a blog post, editing for you. And that's just ChatGPT. Each of these tools has continued to be programmed to seem more intelligent. Gemini has come out with multiple different models, including its latest 2.0 Flash Thinking Experimental and Experimental with Apps, which has that same reasoning feature, where as you ask it a question, it will show you. All right, what do I want to ask it? I was learning about copyright law yesterday. U.S. copyright law and why is it important for IT professionals. Okay, and I've got the thinking experimental set up. And here is where you'll see it's thinking, so to speak. So it's saying, okay, you're asking about this. I'm going to deconstruct the request, brainstorm key concepts for what you have asked, structure this section, brainstorm key concepts for this part of your prompt, structure this, elaborate on each point, add a conclusion, review, and edit. And then this is its actual response. So you can now kind of see behind the scenes of how it comes up with its text-based response. Google's Gemini and Microsoft's Copilot are now being embedded directly into the Office suite as well as the Google Workspace suite. So as you're writing text in a Google document, Gemini will pop up if you have the Workspace suite upgraded version, and it can write a whole draft for you, rewrite it for you, suggest improvements, help with formatting, do a lot of things you just saw that ChatGPT can do in Canvas. And then Google has come out actually with several other tools. This tool, Google Notebook LM, if you have not tried it out, is one of the most popular tools from students right now. You can upload a whole bunch of text, and then you can have conversations with the text, ask questions about the text. My students love the study guide feature. So they'll upload all of their notes from a professor for a semester and click the study guide button, and it will immediately generate a study guide. But they also like what you see in the top right here, this AI generated podcast. So if you upload a text, which I have here, which is a chapter about the freedom of the press, then it will generate a podcast where two AI generated people are talking to each other. And then you can actually jump into the conversation and ask questions of the AI hosts. And my students have found this to be really intriguing because they often struggle with reading a whole bunch of text, and now they have a multimodal way to help their thinking about it. Google is bringing this Learn LM concept to a lot of its different tools. So in addition to Google Notebook LM, it's going to be brought into Google Search, where right now you'll have an AI overview of the search, but then you'll be able to kind of break it down, simplify the language, or click different tabs to make it easier to understand the AI overview. And Android, you could come across a math or physics problem, circle it, and then Android will help you solve it. The Gemini's coming out with learning coaches or gems, kind of like personal agents. And then YouTube, this is something that's supposed to be coming out. As you're watching a YouTube video, you can figuratively raise your hand while watching the video and ask questions that AI will respond to for you. Gemini, like ChatGPT and Perplexity, has also come out with its deep research mode. Again, you have to upgrade to get access to that version. And then also has this multimodal capability. So here it is on my phone. Let's see, we got Gemini's popping up. Oh, you can't see it. A little bit here. In the corner, I'm going to press turn up my volume. It's telling me to turn up my volume. Here we go. My internet broke down. How do I fix this?
Okay, internet troubles can be really frustrating. Let's try to get you back online. First, the easiest thing to try is restarting your modem and router. Can you locate them for me?
I don't know what a router looks like. Can you describe that to me?
Okay, a router is basically the brains of your home network. It's usually a box, sometimes white or black, with a bunch of lights on the front and maybe some antennas sticking out. The modem, on the other hand, is usually smaller and connects directly to your wall for the internet.
I've actually used this tool to work on my foreign language. I'm trying to improve my Spanish conversation, and it will engage in a full conversation with me in Spanish. But Google's trying to go beyond that and promote this tool as your next companion that has all the answers or that can help you with everything in life. Let's take a look.
Hello? Hi, I'm Gemini.
Hi, Gemini?
How can I help you?
So I just talk?
Yes, but normal. Just talk normal.
We can have a conversation about anything you like.
Huh, anything? Can I ask you silly questions?
Can you tell something spicy without tasting it?
Have you tried smelling it?
Ooh, the wrath of Achilles.
That's right.
Yes, I knew it.
Next question.
So it's like a treadmill for hot dogs?
Exactly. The hot dogs are getting all this exercise, but
I don't want to go to the gym.
why don't you just go for 10 minutes and see how you feel?
It's so far.
Give me another one, but more intense.
Simpler?
Snappier.
Like I've never fixed a car before.
Make it sound professional.
In regards to working this weekend, we believe it's important to prioritize our well-being.
Oh, that's good.
Very professional.
Can I interrupt you?
Of course you can
And you'll
interrupt.
just stop.
時には立ち止まってみることも大切です。
それ好きか?
Does the child seem ready for bedtime?
No.
Try looking for a small round bolt somewhere on the oil pan.
Got it.
And then...
So as these tools have come out and been programmed to seem more intelligent, many people are starting to wonder, are we at the point where machines can actually think? In fact, this is something Alan Turing, who was one of the kind of founders of the artificial intelligence machine learning concept several decades ago, came up with his own test, the Turing test, to determine if we can ever invent a machine that can truly think. His test was pretty simple. Basically, you have one room where there is a computer and another room where there's a person, and then there's an evaluator. You ask each of those, the person and the computer, a question. It pushes out a text-based response. The evaluator looks at it. And if they cannot tell the difference between what a human wrote and what the machine wrote, then Turing predicted that machines at that point will have reached the capacity that they too can think. This is called the Turing test, and for more than 6 decades, it was never passed until ChatGPT came out. And people have suggested that ChatGPT and these other tools can pass the Turing test because people are struggling to determine what was written by AI and what was written by human, where human writing ends, where AI writing begins, and how all of that comes together. But is ChatGPT's intelligence really indistinguishable from a human? Here's the thing. Ethan Mollick has done a lot of research on AI in businesses as well as in education. What he has found is that across the board, while large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot write better than most people, they are not at the level of experts in their field. So they're kind of average at what they do. When it comes to students who think they are not strong writers, they might look at what ChatGPT has written and say, that's way better than what I would have written. When it comes to experts who look at what is written by ChatGPT, they might say, that is terrible, I would never write that. So it kind of depends where your expertise is, but across the board, these tools aren't, at the point that they are going to take over human jobs entirely. They can help with different tasks. So a lot of people then say, okay, but I can give AI the best prompt and it will improve the output of AI so that the writing is at the level of an expert. And that's still not true. This research showed that compared to like New Yorker stories, AI written ones did okay. Claude did the best at kind of seeming human written, but the expert writers for the New Yorker, whose job it is to write, it always wrote the most advanced and the best quality writing. A research study came out last year basically saying that, at present, AI's ability to capture the intricate patterns of natural language still remains limited. So again, these tools are basically kind of good at the average, good at writing at the very basic level that you would see someone posting on the internet a conversation. That's kind of what we're looking for, not very advanced writing. And I've seen this. So Stanford came out with this tool called Storm that is supposed to be the next best literature review tool. You put in a concept. For me, I put in professional learning networks for K-12 teachers. It's something I've studied for more than a decade. And then it creates a whole literature review where it cites all the research. And I was really excited because I was like, let's see, Stanford has created this tool, what generative AI can come up with. And then I read what it came up with, and I said, if a student had submitted that to me, I probably would have failed them and then called them into my office to say, what happened? Meaning the writing looks good. Right on here, if you read what's written here, it looks good. But if you really, really know this field the way that I do, it missed a lot of key points. It went off on a lot of tangents. It would have really made me question what the student was doing if a student had written that. So no, it's not at the quality that I would expect to see from experts in the field. Would students know this? No. Probably not, because they would look at it and say, oh, this, there's citations. It looks like, it makes sense when I read it if they haven't read the literature. But again, these are not, expert level tools that can think. And this is really, really important to understand. So let's look behind the scenes of these tools. The New York Times came out with this really great interactive that basically shows how ChatGPT and other large language models work. Basically, you give it a prompt, who is LeBron James? It takes its massive data set of more than like billions of parameters of text scraped from the internet and uses complex math, basically probabilities, to determine which words go together to make the most plausible sounding response. When you ask it about something that does not exist, like the secret petting zoo in the basement of the White House, it's just going to give you a response because, again, these tools can't think. They don't understand context. All they literally are doing is putting one word after the other to make the most plausible human sounding response. And I actually read something recently from a computer scientist who said, rather than like taking the previous words to form a sentence to figure out which word goes next, that's actually not how it works. Each time it comes up with a new word is based on like its complex math of its huge data set to figure out. And so there's, every time it responds, it can be different because it's basically, in many cases, built off probabilities. I call these tools guessing machines. And these tools really don't understand context. I mean, you look at this AI overview from Google. What's the difference between sauce and dressing? Well, the main difference is sauce adds flavor and texture to dishes, while dressings are used to protect wounds and prevent infection. Yes, this is true. That's not what this person was asking, though, and AI does not know that because AI can't think. AI doesn't understand context. AI saw sauce and dressing and then used its mathematical probabilities to figure out how to put those together into a sentence. This becomes really problematic when people think these tools are search engines, like this lawyer who used ChatGPT to write court case documents for him. So ChatGPT, doing what it does best, which is just try to figure out the best human sounding response, made up prior court cases to cite in the documents. The lawyer did not double check the documents, submitted it to the judge, and was caught because there was just made up stuff in the court case document. The lawyer, who was humiliated, said, well, I falsely assumed it was like a super search engine. These tools are not search engines. And in fact, even with their new search features, like you saw in ChatGPT, the little search option, it still does not search the web the way a search engine works. So these tools basically take all of the responses through a search engine and then still run it through the random probabilities to figure out how to best respond. So I would never trust them as a search engine. It's also important to know that these tools get information wrong often. In fact, a study was done sponsored by OpenAI, and it was put on OpenAI's website until it was recently kind of hidden, that basically showed when prompting different ChatGPT models to respond to fact-seeking questions, so questions where there is a right or wrong answer, its best model, O1 Preview, was only correct 42% of the time. So nearly 60% of the time, its best model was wrong. I mean, that's that's huge. When it comes to Claude, because this study was also using different models for Claude, the Claude's best model was only correct 30% of the time. Other models have not been tested, like Gemini or Copilot. But here we have people who are trusting these tools as search engines when they are actually not designed to present factual information or links to resources to learn more. They're basically guessing machines trying to think or sound like a human. So how did OpenAI get away with launching a tool out into the world that basically can just make stuff up and that OpenAI wouldn't get in trouble for? Well, basically, it's put into its documentation online. Yes, ChatGPT can make stuff up. It's really up to you to make sure that you double check its outputs, right? So it's putting the responsibility on the users to critically analyze the output and say, okay, we could be wrong, our bad, that's on you to figure that out. And because it's in their documentation, you can't really sue them for if it just presents, inaccurate information or comes up with hallucinations of things that don't exist. When you see disclaimers like this, like in Google's generative AI terms of service, don't rely on these services, Gemini, for medical, legal, financial, or other professional advice, it should be a red flag warning that these tools really aren't meant to be information-seeking tools. In fact, there's many studies out there that looked at ChatGPT, Copilot, and many of these other large language models and found that across the board in nearly every type of subject, these tools have misconceptions, lack deep understanding of the content, and are incorrect often. So this is really problematic when the number one reason that college students, and in many cases adults, use these tools is to search for information rather than going to an internet search tool. If you look at the right side of the screen, you see the most common uses from college students: search for information followed by check grammar, summarize documents, and paraphrase documents. Summarizing, these tools can indeed summarize, and their summaries look legit, but I have found that when you ask generative AI to summarize a chapter, a document, it misses key points and still makes up information that it includes in its output. Again, this becomes really problematic because what we're finding, a lot of researchers are finding, is that people put a lot of trust into AI. I don't know if it's because the term intelligence is part of the title of AI, but in this study, for example, where people had to literally make life or death decisions, and an AI bot was put in the room to basically tell them the wrong decision, people more often trusted the AI bot than their own gut, and the AI was designed to give them the wrong information. So we put way too much trust into these tools that literally are guessing machines that don't think, that don't understand context. These tools also are biased. I'll simplify this for you. Yes. Again, here is the ChatGPT documentation on their website saying, these tools are not free from biases and stereotypes. It's really your job to critically assess this content. We're not going to change our training data at this point. There's definitely some biases and stereotypes, but that's on you to figure out. And again, because this is in their legal documentation, you can't really sue them for harmful output, stereotypical output, or biased output. And these can be particularly problematic for when you're using these tools for providing feedback to students or especially grading. Here's a quick example. Leon Furs took a paper written by 9th grade students, one paper, and he submitted it to ChatGPT to grade. And all he did was change the name at the top. So it was the exact same paper, change the name each time. Here's the output of the grade from ChatGPT. The Asian female receiving the lowest score, the white male receiving the highest score by quite a significant amount. Again, this is the exact same paper. And another study, 2 scholars used the same paper. They didn't have student names at the top, and all they did was change one word. I listened to classical music to relax. I listened to rap music to relax. The paper that said I listened to rap music to relax was graded 1 full grade point lower than the one that said I listened to classical music to relax. So these tools often mirror or exacerbate the biases that we see in society. And in some cases, like I mentioned, they definitely exacerbate these biases. So here was a study that found that large language models, including ChatGPT, not only have the same prejudice as humans, but interestingly exhibit covert stereotypes that are more negative than any human stereotypes about African Americans ever experimentally recorded. So these tools have come up with stereotypical information outputs that's even worse than what humans could have come up with around particular race. When it comes to gender, these tools, UNESCO had to come out with a report saying that these tools can reinforce stereotypes, biases, and even violence against women and girls. And if you want to talk about stereotypes, it's really easy to just look at images. This was a really interesting study looking at what happens when you give AI a specific prompt. Here we have Indian person, and what they're seeing across the board is very stereotypical output because these tools are trained on stereotypical images, and that's what they're using to learn how to create output. Mexican person, usually man in sombrero. New Delhi streets are polluted and littered. Indonesian food is almost exclusively served on banana leaves. And there's several studies across the board showing that images in particular are really stereotypical, but it's not just images. Take, for example, I asked ChatGPT who's the most important education theorists, and I get this long list: Piaget, Dewey, Vygotsky, Brunner, all white males. And then I said, any female theorists I should know about? Oh yes, Montessori, John Dewey's wife, Nell Noddings, Bell Hooks. But what about the people who don't know to ask that follow-up prompt? Then all they're getting is a biased response from generative AI technologies that have been trained on biased data. Speaking of this data, so basically these tools have been trained by scraping text and media from the internet. You can only imagine what is out there on the internet that is freely accessible for these tools to scrape. In particular, a lot of the text has been written by white males from westernized countries and written in English. And this can also be problematic when it comes to cultural narratives. So, for example, if you wanted to learn about, a particular area of Quebec, you would learn about that if you were to ask ChatGPT, tell me more about this particular area. ChatGPT is going to use its database of text written in English on the internet of what people have written about that area of Quebec in English, put online, and was scraped and put into this tool to train it. That's the output that it's going to use that's the data it's going to use to create the output for you. Now, if someone has written a really incredible book in French about Quebec that's not online, or that is online but is only available in French, that's not included in the training data set. So again, we're relying on these tools that actually are built based off really biased and really specific data that has skewed views of the world. It's also important to consider, again, how these tools were designed. So ChatGPT came out saying, we've scraped the internet to basically train this tool to understand how people communicate, how people use language, and using machine learning taught this tool to respond in the way that humans might respond. But how did they really go about doing this? They use these tools to scrape text, and in many cases media, from the internet without permission from the original authors or artists or compensation to them. In the United States, you are given copyright to something the second that you write it down, record it, or capture it, meaning that everything that is out there on the internet, unless it's in the public domain or under a Creative Commons license, is copyrighted. So basically what these companies have done is stolen copyrighted work without permission or compensation to authors and artists, and they're making a lot of money off of it. People are suing. New York Times is suing, authors are suing, artists are suing. And in many cases in United States copyright law, there is this doctrine called fair use, where you don't need to get permission to use something copyrighted if you use it within the fair use doctrine. And one of the key principles is the transformative nature. So OpenAI and Microsoft are arguing, well, we took all this text from the internet that was copyrighted, but we transform it so much that it's not the same as the original text. So this falls under fair use, and you can't sue us for using your copyrighted data. But a research study has found that in some cases, these models can duplicate passages of over 1,000 words, word for word, exactly from the training set. Or in this example from the New York Times, some individuals were able to prompt ChatGPT to literally replicate an exact article from the New York Times word for word, making these tools plagiarism machines. And they've stolen a lot of copyright, probably infringed on copyright. But that's all up in the courts right now to decide whether it falls under fair use. Other things to consider about these tools is they collect a lot of information. Always read the privacy policy of every tool that you look at. But let's go back to OpenAI. OpenAI surprised me when it first came out with its privacy policy, because it was one of the most open that I saw, meaning not in a good way, meaning it collects a massive amount of data from you, and then in its privacy policy basically says, we can share it out with whoever we want to, including other users, which I don't think I've ever seen before in a privacy policy. Usually it's like, we use the, data we collect from you to improve our services or to share with third parties, but theirs was just like, we're collecting massive amount of data and we can use it however we see fit. And when they mean however we see fit, they'll use all of these big fancy terms: streamline, personalize, upgrade, improve. It's really just this. These tools are collecting a lot of data from you and making a lot of money off the data that they collect from you, especially if you're using the free version, which have very limited, if any, privacy protections for your data. Some of the upgraded versions will have more protections for your privacy and data. Like at my university, we have access to the Microsoft Copilot licensed version, and that is designed to protect your own personal data, and anything that you prompt or generate with the tool becomes your own copyright. Whereas if you don't have the licensed version, Microsoft can then own that data. Also considering the fact that you are giving data not just about your location and how you use your device and interact with the tool, but anytime you give feedback to these tools, a thumbs up, a thumbs down, additional feedback is basically free labor to these tools. As you see in the terms of service from OpenAI, really we're far down at the bottom, it says, we love the feedback that you give to us, but we're going to use it without restriction or compensation to you. So yes, please give us the feedback. This really helps improve our tools, but you don't get any credit for that. In fact, I heard that OpenAI launched ChatGPT out into the world under its research preview mode without really knowing what it could do, because they didn't want to spend another year or two trying to figure that out. They just launched it into the world and said, people will figure it out and then they'll tell us, and then we'll know how to sell it to make billions of dollars, which is exactly what happened. These tools were also built off the exploited labor of people, in particular from the global south, who have the horrible job of going through the training data, which again is any text that could be scraped from the internet as well as images. And there's a lot of horrible things on the internet. And these people's job is to go through and click whether that information is harmful or not all day long, looking at like the worst of the worst online and trying to train these models so that the stuff that we see on the output is not as harmful as some of the earlier versions were that did not have this human training. And these tools impact the environment quite significantly. These tools take up a lot of resources. In fact, in the United States, the AI is exhausting our power grid, and companies are turning to nuclear power. Google signed a deal to set up more small nuclear reactors to generate energy needed to power its AI data centers. Microsoft just bought the 3 Mile Island, which had a huge nuclear reactor meltdown many years ago, to get that up and running again, because these tools run off huge data centers that need water to cool them and energy to run. And in places where these data centers are set up, they are actually like taking the water away from residents and exhausting the power grid. So these tools have quite a significant environmental impact as well. And last but not least, we are becoming really reliant on these tools at a time that they are having a significant impact on the environment. These companies are trying to make these tools out to be something that will do our work for us, to free us up to do the fun, creative things that we want to do. And people are falling for that. And in many cases, what Ethan Mollick found is that people trust AI so much that when they ask AI to produce something, they don't even look at the response, they just submit it as is. We're getting to the point in education where students are literally asking AI to write, their discussion forum, post forum, not even looking at that, submitting it, and then teachers are using AI to grade it. And it's just AI doing the work of both the teacher and the student. No one's learning, no one's teaching. And in some cases, teachers, interestingly, are trying to catch students, so they're hiding text written in white into their prompts, so that when students copy and paste, it's write about Moby Dick, but there's something written in white, like include something about bananas, and then the student will just copy and paste that. ChatGPT produces output and submit it, and they don't even realize that they have been tricked. I don't recommend that strategy. I think that's not an ideal strategy for building trust in your classroom, but it goes to show that we are becoming really reliant on these tools and trusting them way more than we should, especially knowing the fact that they are literally guessing machines that cannot think or understand context. So I leave you with Some critical ethical questions for generative AI. First, privacy. How much personal private data am I willing to give away to generative AI technologies? If you're going to use these tools, please read the privacy policies. There are some tools that are more protective than others. Google's Gemini and Microsoft Copilot abide by Europeans' GDPR, which is stronger privacy protections. OpenAI does not seem to because it collects way more data than it should. So think about, can you find tools that have better or stronger data protections? Sometimes you need to pay for the upgraded or licensed version to have those protections. Maybe it means using them less if you want to protect your data more. Those of you who work with students also consider maybe you just use the generative AI technology on your teacher device and project it on the board or on the Zoom screen, and they see it and interact with it through your device rather than having all 30 or 100 of your students all log in, because then they're all giving their own data away. Human labor. Are you willing to provide free labor in exchange for using these tools for free? My students far too often are like, sure, I'll give away my data, it's free. Whereas I'm like, let's think more deeply about these tools and how much they're making off of you. Whereas if you could pay for a version to protect your privacy and not give them free labors, that's something you might consider. Again, there's trade-offs on both sides, but also consider about the ethical nature of these tools that have been built off the stolen labor and exploited labor of others. Do you really want to use tools that have been built off of that? Now, there's some tools like Adobe Firefly and Canva, and now Microsoft are starting to pay authors and artists for data to use in their training sets. So I might lean towards more of those tools that are actually compensating people for their work. Whether they're compensating them at an adequate amount is still up for debate, but at least it's a start. Consider also intellectual property rights. I talked about how these tools are basically built off stolen copyrighted text and media from the internet. Do you want to actually cite these tools as original source if you work with students? Do you want them to cite ChatGPT as a source? I don't let my students do that. I say go find an original source. But if you can't find an original source, then you can give a footnote to AI. Also consider who owns the copyright to AI-generated content. If you prompt AI to come up with a life-saving device, do you own the copyright to that idea? Does AI? In US copyright law, it turns out that AI-generated content is not copyrightable unless there's enough expressive human elements. And it does not define what that means. So if AI writes a whole paper, but maybe you revise it, like 50% of it, that might mean you then own the copyright. But the original paper that's written, there's no copyright to it because AI is not human, and US copyright law does not give copyright to non-humans. Environmental impact, think about how can you reduce the environmental impact of your Gen AI use. This might be once you learn how to prompt these tools, rather than just using them as conversational agents and asking lots and lots and lots of questions, you might practice writing your prompts in like a word processing tool, pick the best prompt, and then try it out rather than just continuing to write prompts, because there was a Washington Post article that came out that said like every time you write a prompt, it's like throwing out a bottle of water, like pouring it out onto the street. It wastes that much water. Can you reduce how much you prompt these tools? There's also tools like China's DeepSeek has come out with a significantly reduced environmental impact. So it'll be interesting to see if these other companies follow suit and can reduce their environmental impact. But for now, there is quite a significant environmental impact, and think about how you can reduce that. Also consider, these tools make stuff up, and they make stuff up often, like more than 60% of the time. Should you trust the output of these tools? I'm going to give you the simple answer. No. Biases, these tools are based on biased training data. It's nearly impossible to have non-biased training data. So there's going to be bias of some sort. Even if you're trying to overcorrect for biases, then you're adding in different biases. Whose voices, stories, ideas, and information are represented in responses? Whose are left out? Why might that be? How might Gen AI tools introduce biased, harmful, or stereotypical information into my work? Questions you should be thinking about as you're using these tools. And then over-reliance, right? So we're becoming too reliant on these tools to do our work, or at least specific tasks of our work for us. But in many cases, what I found is teachers are like, oh, it saves me a lot of time. It helps write all my multiple choice questions for me. but then I have to go back in and I have to revise them and I have to double check them. And it still takes time to do all of that. And so then I'm like, well, is it really saving you time? Is it really worth it? In some cases, like, yeah, it helps me write like my learning objectives. It writes it in a stronger format than I'm able to write it. I have the initial thought, then it revises it for me. Then I think about how I framed the original one. That saves me time than sitting there staring at the computer for 5 minutes trying to think through this. But again, you want to think about like the cost benefit analysis of using these tools or relying on these tools to do some or all of your work for you and what that means about, education, work, and society in our future. I also want to link to, and I'll put this, you'll have full access to the slides and everything that is a screenshot was linked to the original source. This is a policy statement that I wrote that's in my classes syllabus policy. It's 4 pages long, but it goes through my thoughts on these tools based on a lot of the ethical stuff that I discussed and what this means for students and things they need to be thinking about as well. So this is a resource, especially for those of you who are educators or work with educators, to think through how do you think through all of these ethical issues from the standpoint of teaching and learning. I'm going to throw that into the chat right now. I think I can throw it into the chat. And then I also put my slides into the chat as well. So let me get the slides into the chat, and then I have right on time for 10 minutes of questions here.
Thank you very much. It's been very interesting, and it joined a lot of voices that we have in the same views or same nuance that we want to bring to the table. I have 3 questions for you. One is regarding the environmental impact. Have we done comparative studies compared to other technologies such as email, video conferencing, and commuting?
I think there was one that, I don't know if it was a study or article that just came out that basically was like, using Zoom is significantly more of an impact on the environment than a single prompt. I think it becomes more problematic if you are using these tools all day long for doing a lot of your work for you. But I think people are just starting to look at those kind of studies because I think there is a lot of fear around the environmental impact. And while I do agree that there is some necessity to look into that fear, it's hard to really examine like the massive impact of these tools. But I do know, and if you click through here on the last slide here, I have an AI and ethics slide deck that is open source where you can dive more deeply into these topics. If you want to look at the environmental impact, there's some interesting look at like specifics of how much data, how much energy and water is consumed from research articles. Washington Post has a really great interactive of the impact of these tools. And then looking at the impact like here in Iowa of a data center that was built and started taking water away from the residential supply. So there definitely are costs. The comparative analysis I don't think is there enough yet and really should be. So I can't speak on that too much other than to say we need more of those types of analyses.
So that means you would not recommend to have an AI avatar attending a Zoom meeting.
Oh gosh, yeah, which they do have now. So
yes.
No, please don't.
I have another question. Are there any ethical AI or less biased AI, trained AI, or biased and stereotypes you would recommend? Is there one that you would personally recommend?
Not that I know of right now. I use a lot of the main, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini. I know that Google's Gemini tried to overcompensate for bias. And then in the United States, a lot of Republican Party right-wingers got mad thinking that Gemini was too liberal. So, and then with its media, it overcompensated in ways that became very obvious, trying to make things more diverse than they should have been, like historical images. And so that became under fire. So I think AI companies are like really struggling for not overcompensating, but not changing the training data. And I haven't yet seen any like large language models that have come out on supposedly unbiased training data sets. But I do think there's things you can write in your prompts, right? So if I asked who are the most famous education theorists, I'm going to get very biased response, but I might ask who are the most famous education theorists, including females and, you know, people of color. It will create a less biased response. Again, you're then having to do the compensating for these tools and companies that aren't doing that, but you know, it's a start until there's better tools out there.
I totally agree with your your answer. The next one is, what do you think the hacker using AI to? What do you think of hackers using AI to penetrate into systems and causing damages? I think it's a clear answer, but I will let it to you.
Well, I would say please don't do it, but I'm not as familiar that I can talk on this enough. I do know that this is not related to hackers, but a lot of businesses started integrating AI into their companies, and then people would be putting proprietary information into like ChatGPT to, you know, help with writing a budget or a policy statement or an email. And then ChatGPT basically like takes or owns that data, and businesses started to get really worried about like losing, you know, their code or their key proprietary information. So there's definitely that aspect. I'm sure there's hackers out there who can use AI to use generative AI in nefarious ways. And from what I heard, like there's even, you know, one of the recent bombings or explosive cars in the United States, the person who came up with the whole idea apparently used ChatGPT to help come up with the idea. Like every technology that comes out, there's definitely ways to use it that is nefarious, and there's definitely beneficial ways. So, you know, I think for those of us who are educators or parents, do like the best we can to teach others to think about how we could use these in positive ways, because these tools are out there and they're not really going away, is what we really need for society and for the future.
And a lot of hackers have joined organized crime. So there's organized and crime.
Right. There's that too. Yes.
I have another question regarding the use of Notebook LM. What do you think? What do you tell students regarding the fair use and copyright issues of using proprietary course material into third-party tools such as Notebook LM?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, our students have no understanding of copyright and that they're violating it. And my students will tell me how proud they are that they've uploaded all of their instructor's notes and TA teaching assistant notes into this tool to create a study guide for them. And I'm like, oh, did you ask for them for permission? And they were like, why? They gave me those study notes. In the United States, especially after Chegg came out, which was like a study guide that basically you could upload your professor's like slides and materials and make money off of that, so other students could like see those and steal, borrow, learn from them. A lot of professors at my university started putting statements in their syllabi saying, you know, my slides, my materials, I own the copyright to. You need permission from me to use them in ways not listed in this syllabus. So I have seen those kind of policies, not very often, and nothing around AI, because I don't think instructors realize how their work is now being uploaded to AI without their permission. So I would start with putting a policy in a syllabus statement and putting that policy on the very first day of class, because students don't read syllabi. So you need to put it in their attention in a couple different ways.
And they can take a print of your voice and use it for the rest of the time, and having you reading, or even being in a podcast exchanging on the topics. Dr. Trust, it's been a pleasure having you. I think this joins what we already have, and it's reinforced us to think that this is a success, and we should go in the future. For people who attend the presentation, ce que je vais vous faire, on va vous transférer aussi tous les éléments qui ont été présentés, soit en document joint, soit pour les liens, et permettre aussi de poursuivre les discussions. Et je pense aussi que c'est quelque chose qu'on doit considérer, sachant là, ce qui se passe avec les étudiants, l'utilisation. L'utilisation aussi dans votre vie personnelle, là, une des utilisations les plus importantes qu'on a présentement aussi la fin de semaine, c'est des gens qui font des livres à colorier, qui utilisent le AI pour faire des livres à colorier pour leurs enfants. C'est pas que c'est négatif, c'est qu'il y a quand même une empreinte là, qui est importante. I was talking about people, the use of Gen AI on the weekend where people print books where people can, for their children, to color. I think there's other ways to get in touch or to get those, but that's a use that is in the case. Dr. Trust, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Merci à tous. Donc, je vous invite à continuer à nous suivre et pouvoir entendre et voir les prochaines conférences. Donc, restez en lien et aussi pour prendre connaissance aussi de la prochaine rencontre du comité consultatif et du comité à la direction comme conseil exécutif de ISACA Québec. Thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Trust. Bye for now.